I kind of look at sustainability as in building communities, because I don't think sustainability as we know it, as we think of it as a general term, can actually be without teams, communities, because it's not something that an individual can do. It's actually what people do together. It's kind of like the collective intelligence of a culture. I think the first thing is going to be getting away from building personal empires and thinking about the collective issues of how we can live together in a community, and that's going to take quite a lot of unselfishness. One of the first things I think that needs to change is our land title, certificate of title. Is I see something as being outdated, a colonial imperial version of land ownership, which doesn't really have any guardianship or mana with it. It's about owning something and using it as collateral, as a dollars and cents value, where I think land title's about a collective, and I don't think land should be traded like horses. I think it should be something that is there, and so I'd like to see community title being the mainstream for the future. This is a very baited question for me, because I've got quite strong views on our present ideology as far as water management goes. For a start, I don't consider the water that comes off the mountain to be a catchment. I look at it as a watershed, and a watershed is something that can be harvested, but it needs to be managed, and farming water is something that's culturally it's pretty unknown to Western cultures, but to Asian and South Pacific Polynesian cultures, it's something that they've known for a long time. The consistent rainfall, which Taranaki is pretty renowned for, the methods of harvesting rainfall are pretty poor. Like we've got a system where we plumb and drain the water that comes off the mountain, whereas water needs to be moving through the landscape laterally and not just following gravity and being shot out to the quickest possible exit, which is the ocean. So to expand on that, as a consequence, we get seasonal variations of wet and dry become a lot harsher, and a lot is blamed on climate change and CO2 emissions. But I think if you look at land management, and especially the industrial farming that we have here, pastoralism, that is probably more responsible for climate change in Taranaki than anything else. I kind of feel that we get fooled into thinking that our natural environment here now is the farmscape, but it's altered beyond whatever the natural landscape here is altered beyond belief, really. Like this area where we live on the coast was lowland forests and significant wetlands, because we've got such a short distance between the manga and the coast, and many streams and rivers, springs, and all that water was basically sitting in the landscape, recharging and providing the nutrient and the life for the landscape. So now we've got a system of farming that channels the water off the land, and the land is uninhabited by people but inhabited by cows. As a strategy to manage what we've got here, looking at the effluent as being a resource and letting it percolate and recharge through the regolith into the landscape, and then recharge back into the aquifer slowly, we could do a lot to clean up our waterways and to improve our sea. With this area having such a strong financial and political backing and heritage in dairying, it's very difficult for any of the regional councils or any elected person to stand up and to do the things that probably are necessary. I look at our regional council as being adrift on a raft with some ability to navigate in the right direction, but are being guided by a stronger current, which is the farming lobby. They've got the Resource Management Act, perhaps that they could act upon. In its state, it's not a perfect document, but I think how each council interprets it, because it's so different and can be digested differently by each regional council, it creates inconsistencies and a certain soft pedal approach in an area like Taranaki, where dairying is the major operation that happens. And if you look at that model of our manga in Pukeariki and how much it's evolved and changed within eons of time, admittedly, you must be it puts you into perspective of how insignificant we are and how fragile life is here. So as far as thinking that things will be the status quo in the landscape and what will be like here for hundreds of years, it's difficult to know, and I think it's always good to know and respect that you live under that mountain, and it is its own force to be reckoned with. We're on this earth for a set time, and the elements that we live beside and under, they are awesome, and they can change the face very quickly. And I think that kind of brings our tenure upon the land even more into perspective, because we must then think, well, in my lifetime, how can I make a difference? Am I respecting the land that I tread upon? Am I treading upon that land lightly? Am I considering the other people that will come after me and that are walking alongside me? So these questions that are quite relevant to me, and I don't take for granted either of those elements, because they are both really awesome. Well, I think it should be more known as the mining province, because they're things that resources that have been commercially recognised to get short-term profit for a small collective of people and businesses. But when you look at sustainability, you're looking at what, from where I'm coming from, is you're looking at building communities, and they're about building on resources, not mining the resources. Is our future, is it needed to be dependent on hydrocarbons? Is it needed to be dependent on the money that's invested in the community through the dairy industry? And I would say a definite no. We are what we are, and I don't profess to be somebody that doesn't reap the benefits of oil and the dairy industry, because I'm a carpenter in this area, and I get work through those people in those industries, and I drive a car. But when I look at, is it the best way forward, or is it the best option that we've got, I think no. Where we've moved forward, we've also moved dramatically backwards. Our quality of life, the things that sustain us are not there. Nutrient-dense food, water that's got minerals in it, those sort of things, they're the basis of community. When we look at what is culture, culture is celebrating the people and the food that they produce in that area, and that is what identifies a people, and how we celebrate life is all around that. And I think we've become a kind of bastardised society where we're unsure of who we are, where we belong, and what our culture is. We search for things to celebrate. We cling on to other people's cultures and have festivals to do with events in other parts of the world, and we don't know who we are, and I think that's pretty sad. The oil industry even though it's looked at as being the energy of the now, it's perhaps the thing that's holding us back the most, because it's stopping us from looking for alternatives, looking at perhaps a better way, slowing our lives down and valuing, cherishing every moment and valuing each other. So I think, there's a lot of difference between what I see as energy and perhaps what we coin as the energy province. Industries is a word that I have trouble with for a start, because the industrialised workplace is something that I don't necessarily see as being in the same breath as community. But I think collective ownership of land and people farming together to produce an abundance in their area and trading on what they produce, I see that as being the future for me. I don't want to sit here and judge and say what are we doing right or what are we doing wrong. I just like to perhaps observe and to know that there is a better way, and there are people that actually are doing that to a smaller or lesser degree. I think if you think about walking on this earth lightly, I think if you think about the energies that we've got that are perhaps unsustainable, or perhaps using them less, and for example, we've been in an unprecedented dry spell for the last 2 months, and the pressure on water is pretty paramount in this area, and there's lots of I think despair about the lack of water in the landscape. Lots of wells have been running dry, the ones that aren't artesian, the ones that are reliant on runoff. I think we need to look at the reasons why and stop blaming CO2 emissions and climate change and things that are happening globally, and start looking at what we're doing here. Is there a reason for this, and what are we doing that perhaps can improve this? I think strategies and roadmaps to get to where we can have a community that can live together sustainably is the thing that's needed, and without getting up with a big stick and saying, well, you're doing this wrong and you need to change, and if you don't, this is the consequence. I think it's about wanting the change in here, and I think everybody, deep down wants to be loved, wants to have a family, wants to have a community, and the roadmap to getting there is an exciting one, and it's an inclusive one, and it's about mankind, animals and plants and the whole universe together. As far as what are we doing right, well, we're here talking about it, and some of us are doing. It talks in the fact that our inshore is predominantly turgid and devoid of life, and it's saying, is this how you want me? Is this the mighty ocean? Is this what I've become? And I look at it as being an awesome element that regenerates itself, gives so much life, gives us the rain, the water, that then is worked through the landscape and returned. And I think we need to realise that we're part of the ocean, we're part of the water, and to start working in a way where we're not a detrimental or a hazardous effect upon those things. So the ocean's saying that it wants us to walk lightly, it wants us to care, it wants us to look after the water, look after the land, so that the cycles, the life that is abundant, that special part of the ocean, of that shoreline, can be regenerated and restored.